So today we're welcoming Eric Hunker to the soundtrack of our lives. He's going to talk about his new album, Beautiful Endings, and his creative process to build that album.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I loved the album. It was beautiful.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I can't even express it. It's just like really beautiful.
It's been such a long process getting it out into the world. It's like the last week has just been really exciting hearing people's impressions of the music. It's like, it's so much music that it's been really kind of cathartic just like putting it out into the world.
hmm Yeah, so what was the experience of putting it out there like?
I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. It's like, the album itself, the more you listen to it, it reads pretty openly. It's like
hmm
a diary of love and loss and
Yeah,
heartbreak and everything in between. So it's like pretty raw emotionally. And I think there's like three stages of that in the album process. Like the writing of the song is like one moment of kind of like processing emotion and
yeah,
pouring it into something constructive. And then the recording is like a whole other experience because you're taking this piece of art and you're trying to figure out how you want it to live like forever
hmm
in people's minds. And then the release, which I didn't really feel until this week, is a whole different side of that experience, which is really almost like reliving that piece of art through other people's eyes. It's like,
hmm
oh, I mean this one thing, or I know all this backstory about where the song came
yeah,
from and things. But then people are going to hear, what they hear, and they bring so many other perspectives to the songs that you share. And honestly,
hmm
it's been a really overall very positive
good.
experience, but cool to kind of read the art through other people's ears.
hmm What's been the most interesting take somebody else has had on it?
Oh man, there's even like little things like tone where there's a song called So Livid. It's like in the middle of the
hmm
album, and it's like this kind of barroom anthem of like go live the life you want to live. Don't just take what you're given in life, but
hmm
go live your life. And my friend who was kind of giving me his thoughts about the album said that he heard the song in a totally different way, as like this almost like a bitter response to someone, which when I started trying to listen to it through his like perspective, I was like, oh, I could kind of see I how you thought that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that's what music is.
It's very interesting to hear everybody's take on the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, everyone is overlaying their own heartbreak and their own
hmm
love stories and their own experience onto all these songs. So I guess that's half the point, so that people can see themselves in it.
Yeah. So when you are putting these songs out there, how much of your story do you share, or like the backstory of the song, to keep people interested in it, but not take away from people putting their own input into it?
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going online and putting a manifesto of like what
hmm
every song means, certainly. But in conversation, yeah, I definitely tell story, or on tour, I definitely tell stories about the songs,
hmm
at least kind of where they came from or where I
Right.
was in life when I wrote it. And I think more than anything else, I want to give people perspective on like some kind of foundation
hmm
from where they can hear the song and at least understand what I was feeling when I wrote it, or
Yep.
what was in my heart when I wrote it. And the rest I think is up to people's imagination. I have no
hmm
problem with people creating stories around the songs.
Yeah. So how did the process of creating this album differ from all those little loves? Or
Yeah,
yeah, all these little
oh,
loves. Sorry.
sure, no problem at all. All these, I mean, they couldn't be more different. Like
Right.
all these little loves was a decade ago. It was my first album of any kind. In between the two albums, I did two albums as a part of a duo, but that album was like I was young, I was totally inexperienced. It was everything that a first album should be. It was like rushed, it was disorganized, it was fun. It was, just shoving all my friends in. I basically went to my buddy's house in Denver, Colorado,
hmm
and he was a studio engineer. He kind of converted half the house into a studio, and I spent 2 weeks in the house, and two other people who were living in that house were playing on the album.
hmm
So altogether, four of us in that house were kind of making up the band that would play on that album, and we would record every day and party every night and wake up and do it all again the next day. It was very young, wild, and free. And I think you hear it in the album, it's like not a bad thing, but
Yeah.
it's musically of that age. Like
Hmm.
it feels like a young me. And also that, that was early in my songwriting career. Those songs on All These Little Loves were like the majority of what I had written that I was proud of at that point. And in contrast, Beautiful Endings, there are songs spanning about 10 years of songwriting. So, it's a much more carefully constructed and thoughtful group of songs that are like telling one story. And it was like the exact opposite recording process. Like I took almost a year to record it. I was super slow and methodical about it. I don't know how many times, how many studio sessions I ended up having in that year, but I started it in May of 22. My last studio session was late January 23. And then we took our time mixing it. We took our time
Hmm.
mastering it. I just was like, I was totally uninterested in rushing it. The first album, we like recorded it in 2 weeks, and it was out a month later,
Hmm.
like mixing, mastering, advertising, like everything. And this was like a year and a half, start to finish, like from
Hmm.
starting the studio to releasing it.
Hmm. So within that, you said 10 years of writing these songs. At what point did you know you had an album?
So for most of that time, I was in a duo with my girlfriend at the time, Eric and Happy, and I was writing mostly for the duo.
Hmm.
So one of my favorite kind of songwriting philosophies is that I forgot what book I read it in, but basically it's write shit. It makes the best fertilizer.
Hmm.
And the idea is that like you need to write lots of things you're proud of,
Yeah.
things you're not proud of, because eventually that all becomes a part of the body of work that kind of elevates itself. There were songs that I wrote in those 10 years that I was proud of, but they didn't make sense for the duo.
Hmm.
So kind of shelved them. And that made up, a good amount of this album,
Hmm.
after maybe one song a year that didn't work for the duo, but that I was really proud of. I held on to them and they ended up coming back around. So I started trying to record this album actually in 2020. I was supposed to go into the studio in April 2020, and that obviously didn't happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it ended up being a longer process than I'd wanted to, but it was, I think, all for the best in the end. I ended up adding more and more songs, and I kept writing until we were done.
Yeah, I was just about to ask what changed from, when the pandemic hit to where the album is now.
It's actually it changed dramatically. I mean,
Hmm.
the relationship that I wrote so much about, both the ending and the journey of, ended in the end of 2019, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Just before pandemic life. So initially when I was going into the album, it was much fresher. It wasn't as many songs. There were still
Hmm.
maybe 4 songs that ended up on the album that I hadn't written yet,
Okay.
3 or 4 songs. I was still processing so much of the truth of what this album ended up being.
Hmm.
So I'm grateful that it ended up taking longer than I had anticipated, because whatever album I would have recorded in 2020 wouldn't have been this album for sure.
Yeah. So how did, being part of a duo impact the music that is on the album, or just the sound of it, I guess?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel very lucky to have lived the life of a duo for as long as I did.
Hmm.
We got to write together, write separately. I learned a ton about harmony and blend, and it changed kind of fundamentally the way that I think about music.
Hmm.
And so I think it informed the music a lot. I mean, it also was written kind of from a third person perspective about the duo at times. It was almost like a narrator telling the story of that journey.
Yeah. So this is a bit off topic, but I noticed that you, in addition to music, teach workshops on healthy masculinity and consent culture for teenagers. So how did you end up working with those topics?
Yeah, kind of, I guess, serendipitously. It wasn't something that I had necessarily planned. I was, for my own benefit, putting myself in spaces of learning
Hmm.
around healthy masculinity and kind of deconstructing ideas of toxic masculinity and the ways that
Hmm.
patriarchy kind of make us feel free or less free to
Yeah.
live the kind of lives that we want to live. I was doing that for myself, and at the same time I was running a music program at a summer camp,
Hmm.
which I had done for many years at different camps. And there was question basically raised to a group of staff, if there could be a course or a class created around some of those ideas.
Hmm.
I volunteered to look into it and to try to develop some ideas. And the more that I worked on it, the more excited I got and the more I ended up learning for myself and studying. And I ran just a 3-week program at a summer camp that teenagers could sign up for. And it was really well received. And it turned out to be a space that teens in large part were kind of desperate to talk about.
Yeah.
Not just male identifying teens, but like all kinds of
Hmm.
teenagers were excited to have space to kind of explore those ideas. So
Hmm.
it's become not a massive part of what my life looks like now, but it's something that I really enjoy engaging in, and a topic that I'm still constantly learning about.
Yeah. So does that impact your music in any way, or has it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what's the chicken and what's the egg, but but the perspective from a relationship lens, I think. I mean, this album, I think this album for me was even an exercise in taking a step back from the heartbreak of a relationship ending
Hmm.
to look at, the ways that we celebrate beginnings and journeys versus the ways that we kind of villainize endings. And I think that in
Hmm.
itself is even kind of baked into this world of like healthy relationships and
Yeah.
the ways that we need to affirm our masculinity in spaces. And so I think probably the same reason that I'm interested in that topic is the same reason that I wrote a lot of the songs on this album.
Hmm. So I want to make sure I phrase this correctly. So for teenagers that are looking for resources around that topic, where can they find some?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a more difficult topic to engage in learning around than I would like for it to be, because
Hmm.
there are a lot of folks who have co-opted that field to try to push like really unfortunate ideas and agendas.
Hmm.
So I would say, just tread lightly when you're kind of looking at positive masculinity, healthy masculinity.
Hmm.
I think for me, a really formative book on the topic was The Will to Change by Bell Hooks.
Okay.
I would also say Man Enough, which is a book and also a podcast by Justin Baldoni,
Hmm.
which I think does a pretty good job in that world. And For the Love of Men by Liz Plank. Those are the three that I often recommend as like a starting place.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So what artists or albums have influenced your musical style?
So many. I mean, I grew up big time on the oldies. Like
Hmm.
that was what we listened to as kids. My dad was super into like Kingston Trio and Jim Croce, and my mom loved Phil Oakes and the Beatles.
Hmm.
And so I grew up listening to music of that era, 50s, 60s, 70s. In my own kind of exploration, I had a big kind of punk and ska phase of my life that was like when I really connected deeply with the idea that music can just bring you to life in a way that
Hmm.
I had never felt before. So
Yeah.
Bouncing Souls, Hopeless Romantic is always an album I look to as like one of the first that just made me feel the magic of music. Catch 22, Keysby Nights. And then when I was getting a little bit older, the kind of contemporary singer-songwriters, John Mayer's Continuum
Hmm.
was one that just like blew my mind from a songwriting perspective,
Hmm.
in like my young songwriting life. And then more recently, I live in Oklahoma. I live in Tulsa, and there's some
Hmm.
great songwriters out of Tulsa and out of Oklahoma recently. John Moreland is one that I really love, and I really admire the way that he writes about heartbreak. Zach Bryan, who's been exploding
Yeah.
all over the place, even his music has been really refreshing.
Hmm. Are there artists or albums that you tend to gravitate towards when you're creating a new song or kind of trying to get in that mindset?
I mean, it totally it rotates. When I was writing this album, I was listening to a lot of Dawes.
Hmm.
They're a band out of Southern California. Noah Khan for sure. The last few
Yeah.
years. Yeah, I mean, my first album, All These Little Loves, I was definitely listening to a ton of Continuum, John Mayer, and John Mayer trio stuff. Yeah, it's all. I mean, I think the longer that I've lived in Oklahoma, and I lived in Austin, Texas before this,
Hmm.
the more Americana influences
Okay. Yeah.
creep into my music. So that's like where the Turnpike Troubadours and Zach Bryan and Chris Stapleton kind of find their way in.
That makes sense. Get influenced by where you live.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't mind it. I mean, it's music I love.
Yeah, that's always good to like the music that's influencing you.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully.
Yeah, so you're known for telling stories through your music. Can you share a memorable story or experience that shaped one of the songs on this album?
Yeah, there are a lot of good stories. I'll share maybe one of the lesser known ones, even for people who have been following my music for a long time.
Hmm.
There's a song on the album called "With Me." It's a duet between me and Happy, and we were in the studio recording the title track for the album. I asked her to be on the track "Beautiful Endings," which was really poetic and beautiful and hard for us both. You know, we
Hmm.
had been in this relationship for such a long time and been musical partners for so long, and you know, this is years after. So that was a really beautiful experience. And we finished the song "Beautiful Endings," and we still had some time left that day in
Hmm.
the studio. And so I looked back in kind of my song catalog to see if there was another song I had written as a duet that might be a cool thing to bring into this space. And I'd written this song with me maybe in 2015,
Hmm.
2016. It was a long time ago. And it was basically we had gone on a trip to Niagara Falls, and after that trip, there was like a moment of in our relationship where we didn't know if we were going to stay together or break up.
Hmm.
And you know, Niagara Falls is this place where people are constantly proposing to each other. It's super romantic, you know,
Yeah.
backdrop. There's like nothing but love in the air. And the first line of the song is "We fell at the falls. What a
Hmm.
perfect irony." And you know, that was like kind of where it came from. It was like we went to this place, and
Hmm.
actually, while everyone was falling in love, we were falling apart. And we ended up working it out and staying together for a number of years. But I brought that song and played it for her in the studio, and the engineer we were working with, Kendall Osborne, who's just incredible, he was like, "Oh, y'all have to do that song, and you need to do it just like this." So we did it as a live take, just us on two stools, two mics, me playing guitar. I think we tried it 2 or 3 times, and that was the third take, just totally unedited.
Wow, it was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I noticed on the album that you have Get Better as both an acoustic and the regular version. So
Mm-hmm.
what was the choice behind having both of them on the album?
Yeah, that was the last song I wrote, and I wrote it summer of last year. And when I wrote it, it was in you know in the way that I wrote it, in the way that it had existed for the people I played it for in those first couple months of it existing. It was an acoustic song. There was
Hmm.
there was no consideration of there being a band behind it. But the more that I played it in the studio and kind of as we were putting it all together, there were two very different visions for the song that me and the engineer were talking through.
Hmm.
One was like this stripped down acoustic version, and one was like kind of a early 2000s pop rockish version.
Hmm.
And we tried out both, and we really liked both ideas. And
Hmm.
there's a fear that a lot of musicians have, I think, when they're making an album. You pour so much time and heart into a song, and then everyone only knows this one snapshot of that song for
Yeah.
the time. And unless they see you live, like that's just what it is. And so, you know, one way that I dealt with that fear of like not getting to have my cake and eat it too was I always thought of this album as kind of two 8 song albums, Beautiful, which are the
Hmm.
first 8 tracks, and Endings, which are the last 8 tracks. And I was just like, what if we do both and just put one on each album? And everyone liked the idea, so we went for it.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah, I feel like it's very unique because you normally only see people will release it later. And I think it's very interesting that you put them together.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny, the people who heard the song, you know, in the year between when I wrote it and this came out,
Hmm.
they all were so stoked when they heard the acoustic version come out on the album, because
Hmm.
even though they liked the full band version, it didn't feel like the song to them.
Okay.
So I was glad to hear that.
Yeah, I feel like to me it felt like two different songs, and I had to go, wait, I already heard this.
This feels kind of familiar.
And I thought that was really cool that it took on such a different life in both versions.
Yeah, it definitely paints the words even in a totally different light.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really unique.
Thank you.
So you've been on tour with your duo. Can you share some memorable moments from that, from tour life?
Yeah. I mean, we spent the majority of our time together on the road, and we got to do some really, really incredible gigs and, play with some really amazing people. We lived in Austin, Texas for the first few years of the duo existing. And one of the coolest experiences in Austin is South by Southwest. If you've ever gotten to
Hmm.
experience it, it's like a 3-week festival, basically, film and tech and music. And we got to play at South by Southwest a couple of times, which was really a great experience, super fun, meet so many cool musicians and collaborate. I mean, one of the experiences that we talk about, or at least I'm sure it's a part of my bio, is playing at the United Nations.
Hmm.
And that was also with Happy. We were invited to play at the UN in New York, which was also like just a really powerful experience. And I was able to invite my mom, and that was like a I think any parent who's had a kid go into music probably has experienced the range of emotions from, how are they going to make rent next month, to hopefully some like moment of maybe they're going to be all right. And I think that was one of the maybe they're going to be all right moments, where
Hmm.
my mom got to see me perform there, and it was really kind of a coming of age kind of thing.
That's really cool. So what is playing at the UN like?
I mean, this was for I've done a lot of work in the Jewish world. I'm Jewish, and part of the music that I've played, or part of the events that I've played in the music world, have been around kind of Holocaust education trips. And the
Okay.
way that we ended up being invited to the UN was there was a ceremony commemorating an anniversary of or like a memorial of this trip that is a Holocaust education trip called March of the Living, which is
Hmm.
it's a trip where people from all over the world, I mean, something like 15,000 people
Wow.
go to Poland with Holocaust survivors to bear witness to what happened there, to learn the history,
Hmm.
to talk to the survivors, and to march the actual walk between Auschwitz and Birkenau.
Hmm.
And we were asked one year to play music for that ceremony in Poland, which we did. And then later that year, we were asked to mark the event that was being held at the UN with the two of us and one other musician who were invited to be a part of that. So that was kind of how it happened. And it was obviously because of the moment and the what we were commemorating. It was somber, but it was very powerful.
Yeah.
And also it was powerful for it to be happening in that space.
Yeah. What did that feel like to be playing in Poland in that circumstance?
I mean, it's, as you can imagine, one of the more powerful moments of my own life. you
Hmm.
know your our experience, we were up on a stage kind of at the edge of the main, I don't really even know how to describe it, but at the edge of Birkenau.
Okay.
And we were looking at the road that leads to Birkenau from Auschwitz, and there were somewhere between 12 and 15,000 participants of this trip making that walk, which is, I don't know, something like a couple kilometers. And so we're playing and watching the sea of humanity bearing witness to the site, and not only kind of walking in those footsteps of history, but also walking it with people who had been liberated from those camps 70 years ago nearly, and really the last generation of those survivors.
Hmm.
At this point, already now there are very few survivors who are physically well enough to make that trip anymore. But
Yeah.
this was something like 8 years ago. So it was sobering, it was humbling, it was very powerful, and yeah, a lot of tears, a lot of tears. But I'm grateful that we were able to be a part of kind of setting the musical landscape for people to
Yeah.
experience that day.
Yeah. That just sounds very powerful.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So does you being Jewish have any impact on the music that you make? Like, do you use your heritage as inspiration, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the way that every part of us informs the kind of art we create, for sure. My Jewish identity is a huge part of who I am. I was the son of an interfaith parents, and grew up, with learning about Christianity and Judaism, and yeah, living a Jewish life from that point. It for sure informs the way that I create art, informs the way that I think about the world, that I think about my own life and love. And yeah, I mean, you can't, I guess at some point you can't separate the two.
Yeah, that makes sense. It becomes such a part of you that it is you.
Yeah.
So when you're, struggling to start the creative process or to kind of get that inspiration going, what do you do?
So I'm a huge believer in trying to take as much chance out of the equation as I can. I spent years of my life waiting for inspiration. And, in those years, what would normally happen is I would have a day or a couple days of like massive inspiration, and I would write 2 or 3 songs in the span of a week.
Mhm.
And then I wouldn't write anything for a year.
Yeah.
And that was a number of years in my 20s. And it took me a while to understand that the creative muscle is like any other muscle that we would think of. It needs to be trained in the same way that we might exercise our body.
Yeah.
And it's unreasonable for us to expect that if we only engage in creative output when we're feeling this inspiration, that won't continue to be the case, that we'll have
Yeah.
to wait for these lightning bolts of inspiration. So I really try to make it a part of my weekly practice to
Hmm.
sit down and write. I do writing exercises. I do free writing. I constantly am recording voice notes on my phone for melodies that come to mind or little guitar parts that come to mind. I always have a guitar nearby. I always have some way to write lyrics down, either on my phone or in a journal. I have them hidden all over the place. And yeah, it's helped so much. I think even if I sit down to write and it's not something that I'm totally enthusiastic about,
Hmm.
I'm always glad that I did.
Hmm. I feel like people don't understand that being creative isn't something that's always there.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's like almost never. I mean, people.
Yeah.
I know some of the greatest songwriters I know are constantly frustrated about writing, but I think there's like a paradox in creative pursuits where when I can't remember who, this is not an original idea. I would love to credit it, but I can't remember who said this. But that when you start whatever art you're interested in because you were inspired by something,
Hmm.
someone. There's some, for me,
Yeah.
all these musicians that made me want to do this thing, and I wanted to be a musician since I was a kid. But when you actually start doing that, the gap between what you hear and what you are is so
Hmm.
big that it's wildly discouraging. And so when you're at that level, it's really hard to share anything that you're doing. But the reality is you don't get better until you start sharing, because
Hmm.
you can't get feedback, you can't look reflectively on your own work. So people are constantly stuck in this cycle of not sharing and not improving and feeling like they haven't improved, so they can't share.
Hmm.
So early on, I tried to get myself to a place of sharing what I was working on, even when I wasn't the proudest of it. And I think it went a long way in making me more comfortable with the craft.
Hmm. So to an aspiring artist, what advice do you have for, working through that?
Yeah. I mean, I am all about sharing, and it's easier now than ever. When I started, I was uploading to YouTube every Wednesday for like 2 years. I did these Happy Wednesday videos that were just covers and originals. And
Hmm.
looking back on them, half of them are like so embarrassing. Uh, but I'm glad I did it, because even in a short period of time, I could look back at a catalog of things that I had created, and I could see, oh, when you sing this way, you look so much more comfortable. If you sing this way, it sounds so much more
Hmm.
strained. I could see which parts of my playing needed improvement, which parts of my like just performance kind of presence needed improving. So the biggest piece of advice I could give is treat creativity the way that you would treat anything else in life that you want to get better at, which means
Hmm.
practice. If you want to get better at piano, you're going to play scales. If you want to get better at writing lyrics, you've got to do some writing exercises.
Yeah.
And more than that, find ways, big and small, that you can share your art with friends, with family, with the internet, so that at the very least you're getting some feedback on
Hmm.
where you're going.
Yeah. So, in this digital age, artists are kind of expected to both create music and then have this online presence that is always there. How do you handle that?
It's hard. I mean, coming from someone who has had an online presence since the early 2010s, uploading to YouTube and things like that. And I'm still navigating my online presence on TikTok and Instagram. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask, because if I'm being totally honest, if I weren't a musician, I don't know that I would want social media. I'm like,
Hmm.
I believe, I believe that it is bad for me. Like
Hmm.
I deeply believe that TikTok on the whole is just like not the best for my brain and my heart.
Yeah.
But I have it because, it's a part of life as a musician, reaching
Hmm.
people that wouldn't otherwise find your music, your art. And also, there's obviously so many cool and beautiful parts of it. But I guess what I would say is your health and your mental health comes first.
Yeah.
You're never going to have like a healthy and vibrant online presence if your life doesn't feel healthy and vibrant. And I think the worst versions of declines that we see artists experience are usually way ahead of what you see online. Someone is
Hmm.
is deteriorating personally and still putting a front up online
Yeah.
as if everything's fine, and it actually prevents friends and family from understanding how to help that person as they're going through it.
Hmm.
I guess the only advice that I would give is take care of yourself. It's bigger than how many likes you're getting and how many shares your posts are getting.
Yeah. So at this moment, are there any, things in the future that you can share with us for fans to be excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I so the album just came out
Hmm.
October 20th. That's super exciting. I'm very excited that people are finally getting a chance to listen to it. I'm continuing the tour. I'm working on confirming a bunch of dates right now, so they'll be
Hmm.
going up soon on my website, erichunker.com/tour. I just confirmed a Chicago show. I'm working on the Tulsa album release show. I'm going to be doing a leg in the Northeast and West Coast.
Oh, any Boston shows?
Definitely coming to Boston.
Yes.
Not a confirmed date yet, but I would love to see you there.
That'd be awesome.
And yeah, I think in this next 6 months, the biggest thing will just be tour. And then whenever this tour finishes up, I mean, I've written so much in the past couple of years while I've been working on this album. I think the most exciting thing to me, and this is the case for a lot of creatives, like by the time your project comes out, you've already moved on to so much other stuff that you're just excited for
Yeah.
the next one. So yeah, if you come see me live, I'll also play a couple new ones that aren't on the album. That's been super fun, and I'm always looking forward to the next single that's going to come out. So probably in these next 4 or 5 months, I'll probably be back in the studio working on at least a new single.
Very exciting.
Well, thank you. Appreciate
So
it.
before I ask the last question, was there anything else that you wanted to mention or talk about today?
Wow. Yeah, maybe one piece of advice and
Hmm.
one ask. The piece of advice for musicians, if you're going into this, there is no replacement in this world for playing music live out in the world. Like,
Hmm.
you can post all you want and you can have hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, and it still will not translate one to one to the real world. So much of the beauty that music brings to this world is when you share it with people in person. And
Hmm.
so my piece of advice would be go play small shows and big shows and open mics and house concerts and busk and do whatever it takes to just get that experience, because the human connection when it comes to music is just magic. It's the closest thing to magic that I know of in this world.
Hmm.
And my ask would be, if you're a fan of music, go see your favorite artists live. Like, especially the ones who are not selling like Live Nation arenas out. Uh, but see who's coming through your city. Go see live music. It's one of the last places musicians can actually support themselves. No shade at streaming platforms because they were trying to fix a broken system anyways.
Hmm.
But live music, it's magic, like I already described, but it's also
Yeah.
like healthiest part of the music industry ecosystem
Hmm.
when it comes to actually supporting artists that you care about.
Okay. So the last question is, what is the soundtrack of your life?
Wow. What is the soundtrack of my life? I think if I could capture it in a way that I could listen to every day, it would be a lot of laughter,
Hmm.
um, specifically laughter coming from the people I love, my friends, my family. It would be harmony in small rooms. I
Hmm.
love just getting to play music with friends and late night jam sessions, footsteps on a good sidewalk. I love walking. I do it as much as I can. It's like how I like to experience the world. And introductions. I love meeting new people. I
Hmm.
think it's one of the coolest things we get to experience day in and day out in our lives. And it's been really lovely meeting you, Michaela.
Oh, thanks. It's been awesome to meet you too.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So for listeners that want to follow you and stay updated on your career and the music that is potentially coming out at some point, where can they find you?
Yeah, erichunker.com. That's my website. As far as social media goes, I'm probably the most active on Instagram, Eric Hunker Music. But you can find me at Eric Hunker Music on most platforms, TikTok, Facebook, all that stuff.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Have a nice night. Or I guess
Take
I
care.
don't know what time it is there, but
Yeah, no, you got it. You nailed it.
okay.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
Listeners, go check it out and make sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at STO Lives Podcast. Thanks for joining us.